when we put together Meridian Business Day this year, it was like in the committee, we said, what is it that everybody in the small business community needs, right? Because if we can come up with a topic and that's not really relevant to you and your business, why would you come, right? So we want people to come and have that one takeaway that they can say, you know what, this is what I see that I need to do, or I didn't realize I was this way, I need to change and do this. So this brings around the roadshow. And so my goal is today, have these conversations, to get the questions asked that, hey, I need help in my business on this, or I see this opportunity and I've been doing this, but it's not working. Ultimately, what I want to do is that I want to get you guys to look at your perspective and think about how you can change your perspective in whatever it is that you want. Whether it's culture, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's about owning a business, or maybe it's, I've owned a business for so long and I'm just tired. And I'm worn out. And I don't want to do this anymore, but there's nothing else that I can do. And ultimately, you guys are starting to hear about my new company that I'm launching. I have two of the teammates here. John Guanci, he flew in from Boston last night to join us, and David McCauley, who's here right here from Boise. Right Stuff Media wants to really challenge people in the way that they think. And my favorite word is domestication. Because when I started as a contractor, I was told I need to have my business this way. And I tried that way. And it never fit who Brandon was. And so then I'd hear more things about, well, you need to be friends with adjusters. You need to wine and dine them. And I'm like, how did I wine and dine the guys that are trying to rip me off and not allow me to do great customer service? I can't do that, right? It just didn't fit. I can still build relationships with adjusters because they're a crucial part to getting paid and making sure that the whole process goes through. But it took me about 12 years to really build a business model that this was Brandon. This is what Brandon's about. And when I found that I did that, and I was forced, it wasn't like I went to some workshop and came up with this idea. I was forced to because my company was going under, was I found a way that I'm going to do what it is that I want to do. And even though nobody else in the country has their business like mine, that doesn't matter because I'm building it around me. And when I built it around me, I started to get excited about my business again. And when I started to get excited about my business, then I started getting people to join my team. I also had the community say, wow, this is a neat, interesting company because we can see what it is that they're doing and they're excited about what it is that they're doing. And that's how we started attracting talent, right? That's how we had people waiting to work for us instead of us saying, we need to fill this position, let's put an ad on Craigslist. We had a waiting line of people that wanted to work at UltraClean. And that's a pretty cool thing. Now, it took me really 15 years to start dialing it in. It took me a long time. I wish I would have known that, but we go through what we go through to learn what we learn and get us to where we're at. So, ultimately what I want to do today is I want you guys to come up with that question that I posted on Facebook. If you didn't see it, is what is the one thing? What is the one thing that if it was you or your business could accomplish that would change the trajectory of your success? And that could be something that you're struggling with. That could be something that you say, something's going on here. There's new trends, right? We're in a marketplace where things are changing. The way we used to do business last year is not necessarily the way we're doing business this year, and we haven't caught on yet, right? We're small business guys and girls that are working in our business, and we don't have time to keep up with the trends or how consumers are buying or building a brand. And I think as a service-based business, I think, how much does someone know about my company or about me before they even call me on the phone, right? What's my online brand? And I think as the more we have these conversations, the more we'll look at what's working, what's not working, and what's coming up that really could be a potential driver for our business, then we can all have a lot more success than what we're having. So I'm going to challenge you for that one question, all right? And what we're going to do is we're going to put the one question from each of you. We're not going to cover everybody, but we want to get a few of these questions, and we're going to put them up on the whiteboard. And then we're going to have our panelists here. So this is David McCauley, Open Team. And David, I met when he was doing sales training. He looks at business in a different way and says, all right, there's problems here. How do we fix them? He likes things that are broken. And that's why tomorrow he's speaking on conflict. All right. Jules Joy, right? She has a ZR Group Media and Public Relations. So, and she has been on the radio show. Everyone here has. And Jules and I had a really awesome roundtable question, right? And it was, if you were the CEO of United Airlines after that incident where they dragged the guy out, what would you say, right? This was very interesting, and I haven't told you this, but I was on Southwest sitting next to a United Airlines stewardess, and she says, you don't know the real story. And when she told me what really happened was that the guy actually got a refund in money compensation for his flight. He then went back on the plane. Now, you didn't hear that in the media, did you? So it's like, what would we do, though, when we have that disgruntled customer that maybe our employee failed us, or maybe we're in the news for something that we say that's inappropriate, right? I've been accused of saying things inappropriate, which they probably are, but luckily they haven't made big media, you know? We have John Guanci. Now, John is from Boston, and he was my E-Myth coach. So John was a part of my transformation in my business, that when I wanted more out of my business, but I tried this and I tried that, and I never really could get more out of my business to really satisfy my soul, my heart, and really to get that fulfillment that says, I'm excited to go to work in the morning. John took me through this process of mission, right? Vision. When you have values and you start hiring people that are according to those values, man, you love your employees. When you start having a personal vision that says, this is what I want to do, and I don't share this with my employees, but this is where I want to go, but more importantly, this is how I want to feel, right? Everything's about feelings. And so when we started putting that together, I had a 7-year exit plan. We sold it in year 3, so last December. So that was pretty amazing, because the guy that bought my company, it made money, but he bought it for different reasons. He bought it because this was a business with a mission, and it had the right staff, and it had the right people, and from that, it had the reputation. So John was a huge part in instrumenting that for me. So I'm going to let each of them come up with one trend that they see in a small business where small businesses are struggling. Each of them are going to share on that. While they're sharing on that, I'd like for you guys to come up with, what is the one challenge that you have? Or what is the one opportunity? And then we'll put those on the board. So, David, you want to start with yourself? Yeah.
So what I see and the challenge that I'm seeing in the folks that I'm working with now is hiring and recruiting. Finding great talent in the Valley and finding great talent even in Seattle and in San Francisco. The talent market specifically for small business and for technology small businesses is the pool is wide, but it's not very deep. And so you're seeing people get handed around. So the biggest challenge I'm seeing is finding great people and then keeping great people. So there's a lot of pilfering of talent. Pilfering is a strong word. You know, you go find somebody who's good, then you make them a better offer, and they come over to your competition or something like that. I'm seeing those two trends happening, and so the objective being create a play, hire people who line up with your passion and vision, and then build a wall around them. And most employees leave not because only compensation. They use that as an excuse. Most of the time it's because their boss or somebody that they work with is problematic for them. And so that's why they leave most of the time. So take a look at your employees, and you may have some that you're thinking, I wish somebody would pilfer them. Then, you know, you have those too. But ultimately you want to hire slow and fire fast is sort of my philosophy. You want to the best time to fire somebody is before you hire them. So really get good at your interview process, really get good at understanding how that works, and then spend time with folks to understand how they're motivated and where they're motivated. So when somebody comes with a better offer, the cultural aspects associated with your organization are strong enough to keep them close to you, or at least to have them talk to you and say, hey, this is what's happening. But that's what I see is the talent pool suckage.
I think it is suckage. I'm going to pick up on that. Hi, I'm Julia Joy. Thanks for having me here. You talked a little bit about culture and about employees, and I talk with organizations about creating a culture of communication. So looking at your marketing and looking at your social media, and this is a huge pain point for small businesses and for entrepreneurs especially, to go to market and to tell a story and remain relevant in a market, especially as a small business. And there's a tie over to employees and engagement, and culture is the word that I love. It's not just marketing, and probably everybody's taken a marketing class or done a webinar or whatever, and we can all use our phones, and we're all proficient at social media, and any one of us can post to Facebook, and we're overwhelmed by it. And I have a 20-year marketing professional career, and I'm overwhelmed by social media, so I understand how it is. People who are vastly more intelligent than I am and will make tons more money than I will ever make are cowering in their offices because they don't want to get on that phone because they don't know what to say. And so working with people to, and really I'm in alignment, I guess I understand now why I'm here. I'm in alignment in that it is creating a story and the messaging and the vibrancy of your brand, whether you're an individual or a small business, and that comes from you as the CEO. You're the core, so you're the chief storyteller. And so that translates to hiring, firing. You're creating that culture. So once you've done that, the next step then is how do you communicate that out as part of your brand and part of your marketing? And I've seen huge organizations spend gazillions of dollars and not do it well. And Brandon had a good example. And so there are so many marketing platforms and channels that we can be using, and what we're forgetting is to create those cultures of communication and have that come from the inside of the organization. And the core story is based on our values and our mission and how we communicate that. I think that's a huge pain point for organizations large and small.
Hello, I'm John Guanci. I'm a business coach. As you know, I work with Brandon, and I still work with Brandon, I guess, in some capacity. But I think the biggest thing I see right now is this, owners creating businesses that are entirely dependent on them, doing all of the heavy lifting, so to speak, and frustrated that they're not able to create that culture, again, that word, but that culture of ownership. Why doesn't Brandon or why doesn't Dave do what I ask of him? Or, he knows what he's supposed to be doing, but he doesn't do it. Or so-and-so comes in late, 3 times a month. And they're frustrated. But the reality is that the lines of communication aren't there. Your job description, or better yet, your position contract doesn't exist. So you don't even really know what's expected of you. You might know what's expected in terms of a work listing, but not in relation to like standards as to how the work's supposed to be done. And we don't have goals. We haven't set anything up in terms of, okay, these are the numbers. Okay, better yet, what are your goals? What do you want out of life, Dave? Like, Beyond, my company, what can I do for you to help you get there?
Yeah, why are you so pissed off at me, man?
But
you haven't
the point
set
is,
any goals.
we're not having those conversations, or owners aren't having those conversations, partly because I don't have the time, man. Like, I'm in there, I'm doing it, and then all of a sudden, it's 9 o'clock at night, or if you're lucky, you're a little earlier, and you get home and you have dinner, and you look at your checking account and you see you got a little bit of money in there, and you must be doing something right? But you know that it could be different. Because there are businesses out there that do have that culture, that do have employees that come in early to work and actually want to be there. And guess what? It doesn't matter. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you're, and again, I'm not putting down a coffee shop owner. I don't care if you're slinging coffee or if you're working as a hedge fund manager, you can create, and I think Brandon's a prime example, a service business. It's not glorious, but it can work. That culture can exist. So what do you do as a business owner? Well, you get busy. You get clear on, number one, what's important to you. Not so much what you want your product to do for your customers. First ask yourself, what do you want your business to do for you? What's most important? What's your purpose? What's your why, right? And then from there, build a vision, create one that supports that, that's aligned with it, and then share that with your employees. And then say, oh, by the way, Dave, this is how you fit into that. This is how you're going to help me get this company to where I want it to go. And if you don't do it, by the way, I'm going to hold you accountable. And guess what? You can hold me accountable on the things that I say that I'm going to do to improve the business. So you start that way, and you just keep at it over and over, and you keep telling the story. Like, it's not me handing you the vision and saying, hey, this is it, put it up on the wall, and we'll talk about it at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter. It's me bringing it into the conversation and telling everyone about it, telling your story over and over again, and making it fun. It can be fun. But it all sounds so easy, right? But it is simple. It might not be easy, but it is simple. And I think Brandon would agree, maybe.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. If you go to our website, it says, listen to others, but think for yourself. Right? That's our slogan. And ultimately, when I talked about building a business that's built around me, my wants, my desires, my vision, where is it that I want to go? What does it look like? How does it make me feel? How does it make the customer feel? How does it make my employee feel? When we start looking at that different stuff, when you start incorporating excitement, you finally feel like you have something that's worth this time and this energy and the stress that we deal with and the times that we hand out paychecks and we know if they cash them all at once, it's not going to clear the bank, right? Or the time that you hand out paychecks and there's not enough money for you and your mortgage is due, right? Entrepreneurs are so gifted at making things work. And it's not from a book, they just figure out how and they figure out why. And one of the biggest things that I see right now is that I don't think small business owners understand the opportunity that we have today. We heard a statistic, I think it was Julie that said, was it 90% or 80% of businesses, 80 or 90? 80. 80% of businesses are break even, right? That means 80% of businesses are at break even, meaning they're not making a dollar or they're losing money. As a business coach, he's got, what? 80% of the population that needs his help. Making a profit, that is the backbone. I mean, making a profit is the backbone to your survival. But it also allows a company to do amazing things. You know, I put on that smoke out when I didn't have money because I felt like that was my obligation, right? Because that is my contribution to the community. But the community also felt like Brandon needs to do it. But at the same time, during those times when I couldn't afford the meat to put on the smoker, they looked at me as I was successful, but I wasn't. I was broke. I was struggling. And I think right now we're in an opportunity where there's a lot of business going on, and businesses should be making money, and they're not. And I think that's huge. And I hate to see the next downturn, or as these companies that are growing, they just say, you know what? This isn't worth it, and give up, and then go work for somebody else. And they give up on that dream. And meanwhile, it takes them years to get out of that debt. Because self-employment has given me something that I would never go work for somebody else. I'll work with people, but I won't work for someone. And I think when people don't see that opportunity or know how to take advantage of it, and they continue doing the same thing over and over, right now, right? The contractors. Kenny, how many people in your industry that are just growing, but are their profit margins growing?
They're busy.
They're busy. But what happens when you get busier and busier? You tie up cash. And when you tie up cash, what happens? You go closer to going out of business. That's what's happening to a lot of businesses in the construction industry right now. And I know it as a general contractor when the sub says they finished the job today, they know they're on a 14 or a 30-day term, and they're like, can I get a paycheck today? I really need it. That tells me there's a reason why they need it, right? They're struggling cash-wise. The other thing I think with social media, and I think this is a huge topic, is I don't think we, as the small business, know how to use social media correctly. And I think this is where consumers are going. I love the Better Business Bureau. And it's not just because they're a sponsor of my radio show. I love the BBB because they're going to see I have an A+ rating. They're going to see I have great reviews. And those are unsolicited reviews, right? Those are verified reviews, unlike Google or Yelp or the other ones. And I know that if I am appealing to them on that BBB, when they call, they're not asking about price. They're calling to find out when. When are you available to come do this? I love that. I hate bidding. I hate the price wars. I want you to hire me because of my reputation. But how many small businesses go into this price war? Right? If you are so exceptional at what it is that you do, why are you competing with everybody else at that price? I had a conversation yesterday, and he was complaining about his competitor, and I said, are you more expensive or are you less expensive? And he says, I'm less expensive. And I'm like, why are you less expensive if you're better than this guy that's ripping people off? You should be more expensive, and you should be able to communicate to every person that calls you so that when they do hire you, they're hiring you for a reason. Now, my company didn't always succeed on every job. Okay, and I think we all agree that companies screw up. I even screwed up once, I think. But I always told my customer, I said, when I screw up or when my company screws up, we will always make it right. And sometimes making it right means they were wrong, but I still made it right and took the financial burden. If I'm that type of guy, how do I put that into social media? How do I convey that message into my brand so then when a consumer sees that and they've had a bad experience with someone in my industry, they look at this company and they say, these guys are stand up. I'm going to give them a chance. And then after they do the service, they trust them. Right? That's when the referrals come. Everybody does the same work. It's how you take them through that process. So I think, how do we convey that? And Jules said this. How do we convey that into a message about who it is that we really are? That's tough. Because I can help people in their own business. But, man, I have a hard time seeing it for myself in my own business. That is very difficult for me. All right. If you could ask one question that would help you with an opportunity or overcome an obstacle that would change the trajectory of your business, what would that be?
I think every small business wrestles with how do you tell your story in a compelling way that invites people to engage with you. Because I sell custom software, but I also have the software that addresses field service guys. Right? Those are completely two different messages. So how do I do that in a way that hits both those target audiences? And I think every business struggles with that.
Break that down into 1 or 2 sentences.
I think it gets down to how do I leverage social media in a way that invites people to do business with me.
So how do we convey the right message to the right audience?
Yeah.
Okay. How do we convey the right message to the right audience? All right, next question. Scott, you had one?
Well, as Brandon and a lot of people know, I'm writing my second book on sales, and so I've interviewed a lot of local companies that are struggling, just like Brandon said, and companies, even through LinkedIn. I got people Skyping me from Australia. They're like #1 authors in sale in 4 or 5 different countries. And anyway, the thing I see companies struggling with, which is in sales, it is the single biggest challenge, is lead generation.
Oh, that's a good one.
How do you figure that out? No, you can say lead /demand /referral, but the big umbrella is lead generation. I have got owner after CXO saying, Scott, we struggled for years on that. And so that's the one thing in the book that I've been doing, research and writing for like, geez, coming up to 2 years. And that one's the one that especially small companies are having trouble with.
That's a great question.
Great question.
So I've been working in the corporate world for about 50 years, and it's finally my turn to be an entrepreneur. The one thing I'd like to know what opportunities any of you can share to reduce my risks since I've been in business for a week and a half is what hurdles am I going to face these first 3 months, and how can I learn from you to get through them?
That deserves a foot stomp, right? Someone's come out of the corporate world after 50 years and is going to start a business. All right, Brian.
In hearing a lot of things up here and talking about culture, communication, being an entrepreneur, which a lot of us are solopreneurs, and in a solopreneur, it's having someone buy in to you, being enrolled. I think the problem, and what I'd like to find out through some of the experts up here in the panel, which is this: we get so caught up trying to communicate our what I do, which then turns into I'm selling you what I do. When I tell you why I do it, what I'm doing is I'm exciting you and enrolling you. So I want to hear a little bit of why people do that. What do you feel why do you think they try to talk about the what instead of the why? Because we only do business with people we know, like, and trust. Then I can enroll you, or you can enroll me on your vision, your dream, your why. But if I just hear what you do, I'm sorry. 2 seconds, I'm turned off already.
Absolutely.
That's a great question. It's pretty simple. They don't know how. What, why, and how. Frank.
Listening to the comment about lead generation, and I would agree from my perspective in the business that I'm in, and Brandon and I have known each other for a few years, and I've been on the show, much to my delight. While I see that as a critical need in business, and I would agree with Scott from that standpoint, a bigger issue, and I see it a lot lately, and I've surveyed a lot lately, locally and nationally, and some international research work that I've been doing on it. Small business and up is seeking what they think is lead generation, while discounting and leaving behind, maintaining, and taking care of the business that is in front of them. Yeah. The business is in front of them, they look over to try to find the next lead instead of taking the business that's in front of them. Now, for example, I surveyed 7 retail businesses in the last 2 weeks, selling product, so it's a product-based business, and using this small model here in Boise, looking for a product. I did my research and knew their inventory, called up, identified in advance one of their best salespeople. That's a critical thing for everybody to pay attention to. So I got referred and references and referrals to identify one of their top 3 salespeople in each of these 7 businesses. High-ticket items. I went online and researched their inventory. I identified the specific product, where it was within their facility, talked to the referred top salesperson, had predetermined 2 questions that they would have to go find out and call me back. That was part of what I wanted to create. In every single case, not a single salesman returned my call within 3 days. When I said I'm ready to buy the product, I know that you have the product, it's sitting in your inventory, I'll come down today and buy it if you can tell me these 2 facts about it, which I could not identify online. None of the 7 in 3 days returned my phone call, and they're looking for lead generation. So they should be looking for internal training, management structure, and so forth, customer service and follow-up.
I took 2 questions out of that. One is taking care of your existing clients, right?
Absolutely.
That is something that I see as well. And then the second one is what do we say all the time? Follow up.
Research tells us that the customer that calls in on the phone does their online research, will close at 3. It's number one, it's a hot lead, it's not a cold lead. Somebody walking in the front door of Macy's is a cold lead. Somebody who calls ahead and says, do you have a polo blue blazer and a 44 short, I'd like to come in and pick it up. That's a hot lead, or at least a very warm lead. So a cold lead closes at 14 to 18%, depending on the industry you're in. A phone lead that does the research that I did to test this piece out closes at 64%. You're looking for lead generation, and you're not taking care of 64% of a close ratio that's sitting in front of you, calling you on the phone, knocking on your door, saying, please sell me your product.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of companies who are struggling in that area, and it's a huge problem. And I see it across the board in every industry, by the way.
Mm-hmm. So is there any more questions?
I got one more. Kind of goes through some of these things. You were talking about 80% businesses fail. Well, how much?
That's 90%.
Well, yeah, or breaking even.
80% are break even or less.
Right. Yes. How much of that is due to the fact that people are afraid to take chances? How do you get yourself out of the way to accomplish what you know you can accomplish, but you're afraid to? Maybe your ass has been handed to you one too many times, once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. How do you get out of your own way sometimes?
How do you deal with your own fears?
That's it.
Fear is the number one thing that keeps people from succeeding in business.
Yep.
I'd like to add one more. I'm not sure we're going to have time for it, but systemizing. How do we systemize our systems and processes with technology? All right, so let's go back to the first question. How do you tell your story in a compelling way? And then how do I leverage that on social media? Would you like to start?
I would love to start. Who wants my phone number? I've worked with a lot of small businesses and solopreneurs, and I'm glad you said that because I understand we consider ourselves entrepreneurs. If you are doing the work yourself, you're carrying the full burden. It is nearly impossible to get outside of your own head, and you can be a fantastic salesperson or a fantastic fill in the blank and just fall flat when they turn and put the spotlight on you. And a lot of people, a lot of very smart, successful people don't feel comfortable talking about themselves. And so it makes sense to me to hire someone. And so you can't always see the forest through the trees, and to tell your own story. And I see it over and over again. I will tell you a personal story. My older sister is a delight. She's a nurse practitioner. She's worked with children for years. She homeschooled 3 brilliant children and is probably the smartest person I know. And she now is an author, and she's writing children's books, and she is terrified. So she has an advanced degree. She's worked in medical situations all over the world, is very successful in her career and in doing something new, is having that fear, and just doesn't understand how to get outside of herself. Most people go to work for somebody else, and they tell you what to say and do, and you have all that awesome sales training and the follow-up and everything, and somehow you're not able to transfer that to yourself. And so let's see if I can answer this question.
Do you tell your story?
How do you tell your story in a compelling way? Stop trying to tell it. Be your story. We live in, as much as you hate your phone, you don't have to be tied to it 24/7. I shut mine down all the time. But we live in a right now environment. You are your story. This is what is happening right now. And sharing it as if you're inviting everybody into your life. I personally hate reality TV, but you are the star of your own reality TV show. And in your reality, you are doing A, or you're doing B, or you're doing C. If you sit down to try to tell your story, too much time has already passed. The moment has passed. You've already killed it. That is old school marketing. We're going to spend third quarter planning our storytelling for next fiscal year. We're telling our story right now. If not everybody is talking about this event on their phone right now, if you're not posting it to your social media tonight and tomorrow, if it is not happening in real time, then you're not living the story. So I think to answer that question as quickly as I can, my one thing that I would like you to do is stop trying to tell your story. Live your story, share it, and invite people into the story. It's a real live activity that's happening right now in real time.
Yeah, when I think of your story, I think of brand, right? And a lot of what I do with clients is I help them define their brand and literally arrive at, like, say, 2 to 3 sentences, 4 maybe, but tops, in terms of like a brand commitment statement. Meaning, in essence, this is our total customer experience. This is exactly what we're aimed to do. But really, what it is you're deciding, because you get to, as an owner, you get to decide how you want your customers to feel, and even your employees, when they think about working with you or when they think about doing business with you. You get to decide that. But you don't put your brand commitment statement on your website. You don't tell them how you want them to feel. All of your actions, the way you look, is all designed to make them feel those words. In other words, you're coming up with the words that you want them to say when you ask them about Ultra Clean. You know, when I ask David about my business, is he, telling me back? Is your response aligned with what I define in terms of my brand? And if it is, geez, I'm doing a pretty good job. And if it isn't, well, what can I do to change it?
I think that's really true, and I do a lot of analogies when I work with clients, and I do a lot of marriage analogies. I had a fantastic marriage that has since failed, so maybe I shouldn't do so many of those. But when you don't, when you get married on your wedding day, you don't say "I do, I love you," and then that's it. I mean, has anybody been married for 40 years? I mean, my grandparents were married for 72 years. I'm pretty sure they said "I love you" more than once on their wedding day. And so if you take your experience with your customers and your clients and your employees, you have a relationship with these people. So people that I follow on social media, I know Scott very well because we're really good friends on social media. We've never met. We have a relationship. We know each other. I say something, he has a reaction. There are feelings involved, an exchange of emotions, an action and a reaction, the feelings. And so just like I said you can't plan your marketing, you would not come to your spouse on January 1 and say, I just want you to know on February 14th, I'm super in love with you. And on your birthday, I think you're the best person ever. And on Christmas, I'm really glad we're together. You can't plan out those activities, those sharing activities. They're happening real time. You're expressing your emotions and your feelings. And, and I hate to drop it to, such a basic level, but we are dealing with a lot of information. We're all talking about data. It's a very complex systems in place. If you're a solopreneur, you cannot make it that difficult. You have to know how you want people to feel, and you have to, in that moment, figure out how to make them feel that. And you can't sit down and plan that and tell that. You have to live it, and then you have to feel fearless enough to live it outside of you and invite people into that.
I'm going to move on to the next question, but before I do, it's a very interesting because so many people get stuck on what they should do on social media. However, if you did what I said that I did, which was create a vision, personal and a business vision, if you created your company values, if you created your company's mission, you know what the company is, you know how that company wants to feel, and you know where that company's going. That's where you want to post about, right? One of our core values was security. And one of the values of security was I had that list of core values that everybody else had, right? Integrity and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, those are important to me, but they don't represent me. So when I had security, it meant several things. Security was that when I hire somebody, I want to feel secure that they're going to go out to the customer's home and represent that customer's best interest. At the same time, that they would take care of the company as if it was their own. But from the employee's perspective was security meant I want to make sure I have a job every single day. So there are several meanings into that core value. How do I put that into social media? How do I put that story? The core value, security, then I just need to learn how to tell the story through that. So I think once I had all that written down, and this was my belief, right? This is who I was. Then I could learn this is where we need to focus on our social media. That became our brand, not just to clean up water damage. it became who we are as a company, as people, because people buy people. All right, so the next one is lead generation. David, why don't you share on this?
What I see and what I tell folks is, are you even talking to the people who've already bought from you? I mean, just start with those folks. Start with engaging with them and asking them, would you mention me to somebody else? Or do you need what we did last time again? I mean, there is no harm in follow up. I had to sit down when you were talking about folks not following up because it's emotional. Because just friggin' pick up the phone. I mean, it is that simple. And if you are you know the cost far better than I do from finding new customers versus just retaining customers and working with those folks. And so lead gen, I think, is two things. If you're just starting your business and you need to find leads, then you got to be out there on social media. We talked a little bit about social media. The one thing I would tell you is you have to do it. Because right now your perception's being managed, whether you're engaged or not, it's out there. So you have to do that if you're new. So that's for Katie. If you're got a business and have a current business, then follow up with your previous clients. Ask them for opportunities. Ask them for referrals. People are afraid to ask for referrals. Ask for referrals, and I think that's it. I think the reason it doesn't happen though is because we're afraid. We're afraid to go back to that person. We're afraid to talk to them again. There's fear in that, and I think that's the biggest obstacle to doing any of those things.
Can I add something to that? Can we not use our social media for lead generation? Just because you posted something on Facebook does not mean anyone's going to call you. That's called PR. It's marketing. And people are very, very confused. And you hear fantastic stories. Social media, if you can take those words, is a social activity where you are sharing media. And a lot of people are using that as their sales lead generation, which is a very complex topic that I will not jump into, except to tell you that as a PR person who manages social media, that is not your lead generation. So there's a total disconnect. If you build it, they will come. That's not how it works. So in your relation, you're sharing information, you're building a relationship with somebody. In my world, that's called PR. Mm-hmm. That is not sales. I'm not a salesperson. And people often want to hire me and say, great, how many clicks am I going to get? How many leads am I going to get?
Can you tweet for me?
Yeah. That'll be super fun. But
and here's the other thing, too. How many small businesses use analytics? They measure the results that they're doing. So if you have a phone book ad or you're running a Facebook ad campaign, are you measuring what it is that you're doing? I mean, I think that is the key, because you'll hear in big business all the time that they test. What does a small business do? They just do it. They pay the money for it, and then they wonder why they don't get results, or they don't know if they get the results. And I think that's where, if you get in the mentality of saying, let's try different things, let's test different markets, let's try different messages, and you keep working on what will produce leads, there you go. Lead generation as well, I think you need to look at who's closing your sales. If you have someone who's scared to ask for the sale, you may have plenty of leads, but you get the wrong person trying to close them. So I've been guilty of that. I've held on to employees too long trying to train them, and I believe that is a trait that you cannot build into somebody unless they truly, truly want it.
Well, that gets back to your company culture thing, where if that person's going to represent you and your business to your leads, that may be why your current customers are no longer buying from you, because your folks don't carry that vision or the culture with them, and that needs to change as well.
Yeah. So one quick story. If you guys saw my Facebook post where I had dinner with Jocko Willenick, right? So walking up to him, and the guy stare like he wants to rip my throat out, I had to continue walking up to him. This dude's big, and he's got a face that, I mean, it's glaring. I mean, he is really a true Navy SEAL. And I walked up to him, and all of a sudden my mind went blank, and I'm thinking, what was I going to ask him? And then I asked him this question. I said, Jocko, from the book that I've read, Extreme Ownership, and listening to your podcast, you really don't like talking about these types of events and being out and socializing, do you? And I'm thinking, that was a good question, because I want to ask a question nobody else asked. He says, "I'll let you be the judge of that," right? In his deep, grizzly voice. And I'm thinking, you know, I came out and I had the courage to do that. And then I asked him, "Will you be on my podcast?" Right? I could have met with him and then emailed him, say, "Hey, I listened to you speak." But no, I went and I got a commitment from him. And I know he wrote a book about ownership, so if he says no or ignores me, I'm going to say, "Hey, you need to practice what you preach," right? So I already had this backup plan to say, if he ignores me, then this is what I'm going to do. But it took courage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what I did is I took a photo of it, put it on social media, got lots of hits on it, and that was just one thing that I did. Okay, let's move to the next one. What opportunities or hurdles should I anticipate?
New startup.
New startup. Okay. Do you or have you taken on funding?
No, I'm self-funded.
Okay.
For this business.
So I heard something very funny is if you borrow from family, it motivates you even more to make sure it works.
And I heard don't borrow from family.
It depends on...
Depends on your family.
Yeah.
I think it's important to give yourself permission to make a lot of mistakes. Because, I mean, it's such a cliche, right? But, you know, it's through the mistakes, it's through the pain sometimes, it's through screwing up where we truly learn, right? And it's going to definitely, manure, right? It's a great fertilizer. I mean, you know, what the heck. But it will make you tougher, for sure. But as far as, you know, what to avoid, or better yet, where should you be spending your time? I think it comes back to, again, what you're trying to do, truly, like the why behind it. In other words, for you, like what do you want this thing to do for you? And then every decision going forward, it almost like it comes back to that. Like, okay, I'm going to move this way in the direction. I'm thinking to move this way. Well, what is that? Why that way? Why is that a goal of mine? Is it because it's where I think I should go and take this business, or is it like where I truly want to go? And why do I want to go there? Oh, because it's connected back to this, which is super important to me. So that'll be your rudder, if you will, that you can keep coming back to when things get tough, because they will.
So that's your guide, right? You have your vision. This is going to be my guide.
Yeah, and then, but back to your, like, creating a vision, but then also realizing that it's going to change. You know, it's whether it be through market conditions, you know, the economy. You may find out that you're in a position where you had X amount that you wanted to make by the end of next year, and you're going to be ahead of that. So you switch things up and you change things up. So that's where that permission to make that mistake or chart a different course, allow that to happen.
Yeah, I had the privilege of hearing Bill Walton speak last week, and Bill Walton said, great teams have great coaches, right? And I thought about that, and I'm like, go back to my comment earlier when I said, I can see maybe what's wrong in your business, but I can't see what's wrong with mine. I think a coach, a mentor, you know, wherever you're at in your journey, you need to have someone that, like David McCauley, he says he likes about me. He says, Brandon, you're one of the few people that will call me out, right? The people that are valuable in my life recognize that's a trait of mine. And they use that as in, hey, I need to be called out, or I need you to look at me in a way and be brutally honest, right? I think that the second thing is that realize the value of who you are and what it is that you do. Because when people start up businesses, I think they undervalue what they do, what they provide, which means then they underprice. And if you want to be able to hire a coach, you want to be able to live a certain level of life, you need to increase your value, recognize that, and say, this is why I'm more expensive than XYZ company, right? Start with that perception instead of being the coupon shopper. You'll make a lot more money.
What I would ask you to do is start your culture of communication at the beginning. everybody wants to launch, and everybody wants to promote after they launch, and everybody wants to advertise after they get to a certain point. Start the process now. Start being comfortable. And I have a little thing. I'm so sorry I missed your show today, because this is what we were going to talk about. I call it read, write, work. And if you can spend, whether it's 15 minutes a day or an hour a day, reading about the work that you do, writing something about it, and doing the work that you do and sharing that on your social media, whatever you choose to communicate, it's not a lot. You won't see immediate progress, but over time, if you can build that into your habit, if you're building a coffee shop, you need to get up really early and make coffee. If you can schedule 15 or 20 minutes a day to communicate with your team or your people about why you're doing that or how you're doing that, you have to do all these other things and get financing, and you need a coach, and you need to go to SCORE and everything. But you need to also practice communicating the story that you want to live and tell.
And do it now when your audience is small, because when you screw up, it's a smaller right. Because the first time you do it is going to be the worst time you do it, and so start doing it. And the other thing I'd say is a little more pragmatic or less touchy feely, but know your cliff. Know when you're going to run out of money. Know when that money that you have set aside to say, this is what I'm going to invest in this, know when that is. And that
Self-funded.
Yeah, but she knows her cliff. There's a cliff. It's called managing your cliff, right? So manage your cliff and know when that's coming. It'll create a sense of urgency, and it'll create a sense of, I don't have a lot of time to do X, so I need to really focus and run like hell.
Why do we talk about the what versus the why?
Because guess what? You're right. Simon Sinek, what did he say? People don't buy your what, they buy your why.
Why. Yeah.
That's it. Magic formula, okay? So
10% in this room. Bought as what? They bought as what?
Yeah, and it goes back to that relationship aspect of it and being vulnerable and revealing yourself and telling the story. It's super easy for me to memorize a product description or unique selling proposition or whatever. I'm not a salesperson, but the why, I mean, that's a story. You're conveying emotion, and you have to get the other person to understand that. That's a lot harder. I think it's more real. It's more authentic. I would prefer to come from a why standpoint, but we kind of live in a what world. And so as solopreneurs, and I've seen this, like I've said several times, very smart, successful people feel very uncomfortable talking about the why. And you're not just talking about it. It's actually not even as hard as talking about it in this room. Mm-hmm. You're talking to 7 billion people on the planet, and they're, could all potentially ridicule you. Nobody feels good about that.
All right, next question is ignoring current clients, taking care to chase new prospects. So to me, this is pretty simple, right? If I was to look at the most valuable asset of a business, it is the existing client list. And why is that? Is because in a small business, the number one lead generator is what? Referrals. And where do you get referrals? From existing clients. So to me, that's the number one asset in a business, is that customer list and how you use it.
I had a client who called me in Bothell, Washington, and they said, we're having trouble with our sales team and we can't get any new clients and new prospects. And so I just did a dive of their database and said, well, you've got almost 500,000 names in this database. And they're, really? We do? And they were Microsoft. They had done business with Microsoft. Well, have you called these people? Well, I don't know. What should we do? So it's often because folks, they don't even look. I mean, it's not something they think about. And that's the first place to look for new business, and growing your business is your past business, period. And
sometimes they're just waiting for you to ask. I actually read something yesterday. I wish I remembered what the book that it was in, but and it was on this very topic of just leaving, like, say Brandon and I worked together for a couple of years. Was it your book? Yeah. Was it in your book?
You said you were reading it yesterday.
I was. Maybe this is from your book.
Yeah.
So I was reading this great author. Anyway. No, but it's this idea that there are clients out there, like Brandon. He's a client. Yeah, we're not actively engaged right now, but he's a client. So say we work together for, say, 12 months, and you got what you wanted out of the relationship. You you met your goals and whatnot and whatever. And then I go on my way. And then all of a sudden, a year goes by, another 6 months goes by, almost 2 years goes by now, and I'm just assuming that you're doing great. Otherwise, you would have reached out. But 9 times out of 10, you probably had a problem. And all of a sudden, maybe I reach out to you after 2 years, and you get the email, and you're like, you know what? You send an email back, say, John, where have you been, man? Like, why is it taking you 2 years to reach back out to me? A year ago, I had one of the biggest issues going that well, then why didn't you reach out to me then? I ask you, and just say, I don't know, I felt like you didn't want me to reach out to you. I was hurt.
Right? Our next question is follow-up. Oh. Yeah. I don't think we need to go over follow-up, other than we need to take ownership. If there's not follow-up in our company, it's the owner's responsible. All right? It's the owner's responsibility or the manager's, and I think we need to make sure that we're managing appropriately those that should be following up.
So if you have people who work for you, do what Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. Yep. Make sure they're following up.
Yeah. Now, how do you get yourself out of the way? How do you get yourself out of the way? I'll start this one. So I was just in San Diego last week for Entrepreneurs Organization. It was what they call an alchemy. And in order to be an entrepreneur's organization, your company has to have $1 million or more in revenue, and you have to be the majority owner or founder, right? So we move into that, I think, what is it, Erica, 2%, 5% of people that actually have $1 million in revenue or more. And this is a very elite group. They're into life and learning experiences. I mean, that's why I was with Jocko, Tony Hawk, Henry Rollins. The guy is intense, Henry Rollins. So what was so interesting was the one thing, even though they're all from different businesses, that they had in common was the operation worked without them. That they recognized that I am at a level in my business where I have to play a different role, and that role is this. Now, some of those, maybe the CEO or the owner is introverted and he wants to take on this role. Maybe the other one is an extrovert, or maybe they're a visionary and they need to focus on that, but they know their specific role in the company, and then they fill the other pieces. And you've heard the phrase, hire someone better, than you, right? Or someone smarter than you. That got brought up again and again and again to attracting the right talent. And I think a small business objective to that is we don't want to pay enough, right? And if we have that mentality that you're going to bring my business from here to here, but yet I'm not willing to pay anything but below here, I'm going to be stuck with below here type of results. And I think that's the key, is how do you move your business forward, getting yourself out of the way.
I'd like to add a little story to that. I started my PR career in entertainment in Los Angeles, and I was never an actor. I didn't work in film. But one thing, every actor and actress has an agent. So think of yourself as the talent. It's going to be very difficult for you to represent yourself. Have somebody who can help you promote your business. That's what a PR person does. They don't do the work for you. They don't do all the talking. They don't do all the presentations, but they're that intermediary. Because oftentimes if you're working with the media, or you want to be a public speaker, or you want to be invited to do presentations, things like that, having somebody who can pitch you or who can promote you will be so much more beneficial than trying to do it yourself. So think of the entertainer. Nobody shows up on the red carpet by themselves. 20 people help them get there. So have some people on your team that are willing, who feel bold and who feel brave and who will pitch you and who will present you in the best light, and let them do it for you.
Or outsource it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the last question. How do we use technology not only to create systems, but how do we use technology to advance our companies?
And I would say when you're considering these systems, please also, like we talked about for a few minutes, consider a system for how you're going to communicate. And so that might not be quite as easy, and some of those media systems are a little bit more expensive, but have a plan within your organization. If X happens, we will do 1, 2, and 3 to communicate that, and make sure that everybody's part of that. And I've worked for large organizations where really interesting things were happening. Nobody knew about it because nobody was communicating it. So start that at the beginning.
So, and the only thing I'd add to that, Brandon, is understand what is the thing you're trying to accomplish, and see if there's somebody who can help you refine that system and that process. Because if you have a really crappy system to follow up with your clients, the execution is going to be really crappy too, and it doesn't matter what technology you throw at it. A bad process with technology on top is just a really fast bad process. And so ultimately you have to know your end goal, but you've got to find somebody who knows what that steps and stages are so you can refine that process and pull things back in. The thing I'd say, can I answer one thing about the how do you get out of your own way? Know what are the things you do that put you in your way. You're going to have to do some self-discovery and understand what is my crap that I bring to the table that stops me every time. Because you can hire great people, you can do all kinds of things. I work with founders and CEOs a lot, and often I tell them, I'm going to end up telling you your baby's ugly, and you might be the problem. Right. And helping them discover that can be an exercise in futility, but the great ones understand that I am in you see this light bulb come on, they say, I'm in the wrong role. But the process begins with being a little vulnerable, which gets back to what you were saying about knowing your why, being a little vulnerable and understanding that you need people in your life that will tell you, you're the problem, dude. And that's important in understanding that. So
Perfect. All right. So Free Thinking Entrepreneur Roadshow, the Free Thinking Entrepreneur. The description for that is that we do not want to be domesticated, right? I defined what domestication was at the beginning, and we do not want to be put in a box. But yet, I felt the Free Thinking Entrepreneur is a great title for me because it defines who I am, but yet it doesn't, because I've never really fit in anywhere else. And so the Free Thinking Entrepreneur just means that I'm creative and I'm moving a business forward. Our mission here is to change perspective, and through changing perspective is, for me, the chief storyteller, to ask questions, to interview people to get their stories, and find people that are doing it so that other people can listen to it, and then after they hear them, they can think for themselves and saying, oh, he did it this way. I like that. But I'm going to do it this way, which is similar, but it's a little bit different. Because when I've tried to do the things the way that other people did them, or if I hired somebody's system, I always knew and felt it didn't work for me. But hey, thank you so much. And then tomorrow, Meridian Business Day starts